The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Our guest is super. We talk again. Find these people who are questing after who is Barack Obama. On the line with us is Pastor Carl Gallups. You know, one of the questions that I have before we go further is, and why haven't the cold case guys, I know they have done a lot of things privately, and I mentioned I've spoken a couple of times with Sheriff Joe, but people always ask, well, where's that announcement? When is it coming? And what is it that they know? How about if I turn it over to you there, Carl, if you would?
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Well, I do, and in doing so, I can just, as I said, two things I wanted to address is evidence versus speculation, and then where are we now? And that kind of that will begin answering the question you just asked. Here's the deal. You know, of course, they did two press conferences before, and the mainstream media were in the tank completely for Obama back in those days, and rather than looking at this monumental evidence they've already given, which was enough to spark a congressional investigation if they would have done it. But instead of, doing that, they questioned Joe Arpaio. Well, what's your jurisdiction? You remember that?
Of course I do.
What jurisdiction do you have? Well, that wasn't even an appropriate question. But anyway, bottom line, since then, this investigation has gone deeper. It has gone darker. I will use that word in that the stuff they have uncovered, Mike Zullo is now calling earth-shattering, universe-shattering.
I know.
And so what happened, Peter, was at about this time last year, Mike Zullo called me and said, Carl, look, it looks like we're going to be able to make a March conference, an announcement. And because their information was being wrapped up, it was being vetted, they were ready to come forward. But what happened? And this is why Zullo has not made any more announcements as to an exact date, because it kind of bit him a little bit, because he and Arpaio were both ready to go. March, 2014 was when they were going to do it. But they turned the corner to January, and monumental information began to come in. Monumental information. And they had to research it. It was information that could not be ignored. It was huge. It was deep and dark. And so once they started vetting it, Peter, they discovered that there was a lot of credibility to this, and it was the possibilities were staggering. I mean, history making. So they began to delve into this research. Now, this information came in as a result of Zullo's birth certificate investigation, but what happened? Some of the information spilled over into possible criminal activity in Maricopa County coming straight from the White House. Well, then Joe Arpaio said, wait just a daggone minute. And he opened up an entirely new investigation. So since the beginning of this year, Peter, we now have two investigations going. One of them is a criminal investigation being conducted basically by Joe Arpaio and whoever he assigns to it regarding criminal activity in Maricopa County that seems to go directly to the White House. And Joe Arpaio has talked about this a little bit, even in the mainstream media when questioned. But the birth certificate investigation, and this is not really a birther case. The case is this document a forgery?
Yeah, right.
Who did it?
Right.
Why was it done? Why did the president feel compelled to present a fake birth certificate to the country? That's what this is about. So you've got these two investigations going. So as March closed in, they realized we're never going to make this March date because there's so much more traveling to do, people to talk to, more evidence to collect and vet. So March came and went, and people called Zullo a liar.
Well, sure did.
Yeah, but he hasn't lied about anything. These guys are professional law enforcement investigators. They're not politicians.
I understand that, and and my critique is, and we all know the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah.
And one day there will be a wolf, and
that's right.
And listen, I have enormous respect for both of those men, as you as well. The question I'm saying is, you especially with like the attackers, and we get them all the time. They wait for that. They won't deal. They won't deal with the the obvious questions. But it's more, as you know, in the politically correct, progressive world that people like you and the rest of us live in. It isn't about the questions or the answers. It's about you can personalize it to the individual. And
right.
And Zullo has been. and I'm a fan of Zullo's, huge fan of Zullo's, huge fan of Sheriff Joe's, but he's been, he gets pounded on because they go wolf, wolf, and then there's no wolf. And so that's my criticism. And it's not a criticism in the sense of a criticism. It's that you got to stop doing it.
Well, let me speak to that. Mike Zullo and Arpaio never set a hard date.
I know they did not.
So they didn't cry wolf. They said we're shooting for March 2014. Well, they didn't even have to say that. They didn't have to tell America anything.
I agree.
They don't have to do anything. They can throw this investigation in the toilet right now, and they're not accountable to anybody.
I agree.
So they didn't cry wolf. They shot for March 14, and as soon as they saw they couldn't do it, they started announcing it. And why? Because this investigation, and I want your audience to understand this. And again, I've got some exclusive information for your audience that Mike Zullo gave me permission yesterday to share. So I will give that. But the point I'm trying to make, Peter, is that when this investigation turned this humongous corner, and I happen to know about 80% of what they know, so I mean it's huge. And when it did, they realized we're going to need some more months to vet this, to submit it to forensics, to do everything we need to do. Because here's the thing, Peter. When they do come forward, they're only going to get one shot at this.
That's right.
If they fumble this, Peter, it's over. And they know it. So they don't care. And Mike Zullo doesn't care what the bloggers say.
No, I mean, that's the world you have to live in. The critics be damned. But so what is it that you can say this morning?
Okay.
That would be
here's what I can say.
All right.
Here's what I can say, and then I'll give you this exclusive information too. All right. Talking with Mike Zullo yesterday, here's what I can say. They're still hot and heavy. It's still going strong. They are going to do conferences. It will happen sooner rather than later. And they're not tied into any political process. People say, well, get it done before the November elections. Well, Mike Zullo has already said, based upon the stuff they have, it's probably not going to happen before the November elections. And they don't care anything about the November elections. That's not their purpose here. So the bottom line, Mike Zullo has been in Washington the last several weeks. He's made 5 trips to Washington. He's tying up some loose ends and bringing it all together. Arpaio has announced publicly that they're hot and heavy on the trail of who actually did this. And this is going to be some surprising, astounding information when it's all released.
If I may, this is what I'm hearing from the people that, that, as you know, there's a inner circle, if you would, of people that have been kind enough to include me in. And although Don Fredericks has danced with this as well, they think that they know, tell me if this is close, they think that they know who the forger is or was that made the birth certificate. Is that close?
Well, actually, yes, and Arpaio has said that publicly.
Yeah, that's what I've heard, yeah.
Yes, and based upon what I know, I can answer that yes.
Okay.
Now, here's the other thing, and I really want to make this point. This is huge. There's so much speculation out there, Peter, on blogs and internet postings and videos being made and even interviews being done on radio stations from coast to coast. And I listen to a lot of these interviews, and sometimes I just cringe when some of these so-called experts, and some of these guys I know and respect, and I've got relationships with them, but I listen to them get on the radio and speculate almost as though they have authority, as though they know, and they say things, and I'm talking to Zullo daily, and I know that they're not only are they wrong, but they're way off base. And so people are just whipped into this frenzy of speculation, and people are out there demanding, look, we've got all this evidence, why don't we bring it forward? But let me just explain to your audience. Evidence. I mean, I was a criminal investigator. I did this stuff. Zullo's done this stuff. Arpaio, 50 years. Evidence is not speculation. Evidence is something that has to be.
Let me just, because we're close to a pause. What is the one thing that you hear people say in this investigation that isn't true? I mean, I listen to so many people say so many different things.
Well, oh gosh, I have to be very careful how I answer that. I think I can give you an example or two if you'll allow me to continue my vein of thought on evidence.
Yeah, but I'm close to a pause. But I mean, you made a statement. You said that people that you know and respect have said things that you know aren't true, and I know almost all of these guys, and there's a lot of lockstep thinking. Other people think different things.
Okay, well, for example, I'll just say this: there have been statements as to who fabricated or who manipulated the birth certificate.
Yep.
I hear a lot of people saying that it was the direct Department of Health director in Hawaii.
No, I've heard that. I've heard Valerie Jarrett. I've heard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It
people.
wasn't her. It wasn't her.
The one who died. You're talking about Fuddy?
Yeah. It wasn't her.
Oh, I didn't think it would be
But
her.
yet there are people out there saying, and
Well,
I've got permission, and I've got permission from Zullo to say it wasn't her. But there are people out there who are insisting that it was her, but they don't know what Zullo knows. They're wrong.
Okay,
but yet people.
But that's that everybody always speculated. I always thought it was some kid I called Jimmy down the hall that was politically correct, and so had to come up with a race African. There is no designation. He's the only guy in the universe from Hawaii that has African as a race for anybody, mother, father, or himself. Right. So that kind of stuff we know is nonsensical. And Fuddy dies, and people talked about Fuddy's death. But, I mean, real hardcore stuff that people, most of these people, in fairness, honest to God, Carl, I've met and spoken to probably every one of them that I think is worth their salt. And there's so much lockstep agreement that, obviously the birth certificate's fraudulent, but who made it? Obviously this isn't true. All these things are missing.
Well, Zullo knows who made it.
All right, hang on. All right, that's close enough. If Zullo not believes, but knows.
Well, yeah, and I'm not at liberty to give all of the evidence and forensics,
No,
but
I get that.
yeah, I mean, and Arpaio has said this
all right,
publicly.
let me do this.
So yes.
All right, because of time, I'm going to take a pause and come back. And,
Please, I've got so much more to share with
you.
you.
What we're going to do is we're going to do it next. We'll do it. Wrap up here, and we'll have you back. Say Tuesday of this week or next week. But hang on just a second. Final couple of moments here with Carl Gallups, and then coming up Jeff Brown, and then Dr. Jane Orion on the virus. In all fairness, we have spoken for 45 minutes, and I haven't heard anything new or anything that says, and you and I are lockstep. This guy is hidden away so much. And I know that Joe Arpaio and I know that Mike Zullo have been the tip of the spear. And I want to have you back on the show. But what is it that you would like to tell us and I realize it's a short amount of time about Barack Obama and when anyone is ever going to know something? And the knowing and believing are two separate things, if you would.
Right. Well, Peter, you've asked me that several times, and my answer's the same. I mean, I can tell you what Mike Zullo's telling me every day. I spoke with him yesterday.
And he said.
And I cannot, he is not setting any dates, and of course I cannot do that, but he is assuring me, and based upon all that I know that he knows, this is huge, and he's assuring me that they're in the final stages of jumping through all the legal hoops and the vetting process and the forensics. They're in the final stages now, and these news conferences are going to be held, and they're going to be held rather soon. And that's the only words I can use. But Mike Zullo's not lying. He's not covering anything up. Arpaio's not. They're in the midst of a criminal investigation. This is not tabloid journalism. This is real stuff. It's as big as it gets. It goes all the way to the White House, and they've got one shot at it.
Would you come back next week and we'll take the time again? And I know. I mean, my sense of Zullo and my sense of Joe and other people is that there's an enormous amount of unknown information about this president. And Zullo has been, he's been a brave guy, and Joe's been a brave guy.
Yes.
A lot of brave guys in this because they went out after people's careers who would dare ask this question. And so, just to wrap it for today, you have the info or part of the info. You believe that these guys do have the bomb.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Yes, they do.
All right.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.